Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul. Hope you're having an amazing day. In this video, I want to talk to you guys about RDNA 4, specifically some architectural details revolving around the ray tracing capabilities of these upcoming GPUs. In a nutshell, we are looking at a massive improvement from one generation to another. So we'll go over the details in just a moment, but also as a bonus, we have learned more about the PS5 Pro's capabilities as well, not only courtesy of these leaks, but also a games developer have basically released a patch. Now, No Man's Sky has recently received a really big update, and I have to say kudos to the developers, like the update is just crazy. And in this particular update, it actually references the PS5 Pro's APU. So we're going to get into all of that, plus some other bits, after this quick message from the sponsor of the video.
If you're running a copy of Windows 10 which isn't activated, of course, not only do you have to worry about the missing customization options, but there's also that annoying Windows desktop watermark reminding you to activate. Today's video is sponsored by WhoKeys.com, and they have an excellent price on Windows 10 Professional as well as Home keys. Yeah, and they also of course sell games. I've bought a few Windows 10 keys with my own personal account to test everything was legit and worked in preparation for this sponsored video. You can pick up one of their keys for 25% off using the coupon code RGT in the checkout. There's links to their website in the video description. Also, if you're building a few systems, there's bundles available too. Again, you can check out WhoKeys.com and use the coupon code RGT for 25% off the listed Windows 10 key prices.
Before we delve deeply and greedily into the topics, I'd also like to ask you guys to subscribe if you're not already, and perhaps leave a like on the video. But with that said, let's get started on RDNA 4. Now, just a quick note, I'm still hearing that RDNA 4 is going to be targeting essentially the early part of next year. N48 is the higher performance parts, and they look like they are going to launch in the first quarter, with Q2 being N44, which are the lower end variants. I'm not going to go too much into the specifications. I've spoke about them loads of times before on the channel. So in this video, I want to focus on the new information, which is the ray tracing capabilities. Now, there have been murmurs previously that the ray tracing abilities of RDNA 4 are much improved over RDNA 3. And we've also seen other hints about this, courtesy of the developer documentation that Sony have allegedly been providing for the PS5 Pro. Now, of course, at the end of the day, we don't 100% know all of the details about the PS5 Pro yet, and it's not officially confirmed, but it does seem like it is marrying up a hybrid of different GPU architectures. We'll discuss more about that in just a moment, and for the ray tracing, RDNA 4 is being made center stage. So, Kepler L2 on Twitter has released a document, albeit with some of it redacted, detailing some of the ray tracing capabilities. Now I'm going to go over this pretty briefly, and then I'm going to give some of the highlights on what I've kind of learned about some of these features. Okay, deep breath for me. Okay, lot to go through here. Ready? Steady, let's go. Double ray tracing intersection engine, RT instance node transform, 64B RT node. Ray tracing tri-pair optimization, change flags encoded and barycentrics to simplify detection of procedural nodes. That one just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? BVH footprint improvement, RT support for OBB instance node intersection. Now, some of these honestly are, I don't know what they do. I could make some educated guesses, but I just don't know. And so some of this stuff I'm sure we're going to learn more about. It could be an RDNA 4 specific feature or what have you. And obviously at the end of the day, the industry continues to move forward. Some of this though is not so difficult to ascertain. For example, double ray tracing intersection engine. Now the way this sounds to me, and I could well be wrong, but basically ray tracing, well, everyone knows what that is at this point. And the intersection engine is essentially the thing that is responsible. And I'm going to simplify things here just to get everyone onto the same page, but basically when you are drawing a scene, once the scene is kind of like, you know, being created, rays of light, or rays basically are sent through the scene from the perspective of the camera, and then whatever those rays intersect with, in other words, they go pew, 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 whether it's a mirror or a solid surface or whatever, the GPU then has to essentially figure out, oh look, it's hitting this, or oh look, it's hitting that. Again, I am missing a lot of steps here from the technical perspective, but you can do some Googling if you want to know how ray tracing intersection works. But basically what this seems to indicate to me is that the GPU is essentially doubly as capable. Now, there are some caveats, not least of which that this does not necessarily mean that the performance is going to be double, because there are a lot of other parts to a GPU in terms of the ray tracing pipeline. So it's one of those theoretical like 2x, but real world it could be less, real world it could be more, again depending on the scene and how some of these other features and functions kind of roll into one another. BVH footprint improvement is another one that's not 100% clear. Again, some of the wording here you can kind of take a few different ways. The first is it's simply just more efficient. But what I think it probably is something to do with the memory. So basically, there is a really big deal when it comes to how much space stuff takes in GPU memory. Now, obviously, on a console, you have a unified memory. Everyone knows about that. Obviously, on a PC, you have 8, 12, whatever gigabytes of memory, which are VRAM, which is on your GPU. And then, obviously, you can essentially send data to and from the GPU, either from main system memory, or if you're using something like, what's the word I'm looking for? Direct storage, thank you. Then you could basically directly compress data from the SSD or whatever, essentially bypassing all the other crap on your system, sending it across the PCIe bus into the GPU, and then it's decompressed. But either way, the smaller amount of space that you can use for something like ray tracing, in other words, the more efficient it is packed, not only does one, that take up less space, which is good, because then you can put more stuff in the memory, but two, the smaller stuff that's in the memory, the more efficient it is, and therefore it's contending less for memory bandwidth. Change flags encoded to barycentrics to simplify detection of procedural nodes. Procedural nodes, that's not so difficult to ascertain, but I'm not quite sure about that one, honestly. I wouldn't want to, I wouldn't want to speculate. I'm not quite certain what that is. If someone else knows, please let me know in the comments below. RT support for OBB in instance node intersection. I believe OBB is orientated bounding box, doing some Googling. So obviously that's pretty good. A 64-bit ray tracing node, that's not so difficult to figure out, and so on and so on. Now, before we get more into the PS5 Pro stuff, although Kepler does mention here that much of this should be inside the PS5 Pro, so we can just kind of earmark that. Kepler also says that he posted an image here of 3 gigahertz plus for the GPU. So 3 with the, well, basically after the dot here. He's kind of like, I guess, not dot, excuse me, decimal point, brain. You're not doing the brainy thing right now. So after the decimal point, he blanked that out. So I guess it could be like 3.0. But that's kind of similar to what I've heard. I've heard like low 3 gigahertz, like 3.3, 3.4. But whether that's achievable, whether that's overclocked, whether that's boost frequency, base frequency, I don't know. But those are the clock frequencies I've heard roughly for I think it was N48. But again, that was quite old information, so I don't know whether Kepler's documentation here is going to hit that. Maybe it'll be up 3.0, maybe it'll be 3.4, maybe it'll be up 3.9 for all I know. But someone else on Twitter asked regarding the PS5 Pro, Kepler states, and I quote, RDNA 3.5 plus RDNA 4's ray tracing, WMMA, and also data prefetcher. So but essentially you have an RDNA 3.5 plus RDNA 4 hybrid inside the PS5 Pro's GPU. And that's actually really important. It makes a lot of sense because obviously the PS5 Pro is essentially going to be much like the PS4 Pro or the Xbox One X. They're going to be very GPU heavy. From the developer documentation that's been floating around, and I've read anyway, it seems that Sony, yes, they've not increased the memory bandwidth massively over the previous, the base console, should I say. However, what they are doing is making a number of improvements to essentially make what bandwidth they've got more efficient. So you could basically have either an increase in memory bandwidth, or you can make memory bandwidth just more efficient. It's a pretty crappy analogy, but it's a very simple one. I'm sure everyone knows that person who can just pack one suitcase and somehow they can just squeeze everything into that one suitcase because, they've basically played Tetris. Whereas on the other hand, there's other people who are just i.e. me, who were just like, I'm sure it's fine, and just essentially throws it in 5 minutes beforehand. You know what? Okay, maybe one suitcase isn't enough, and then like tries to stuff their backpack with the remaining crap. So basically, that's kind of the thing. One, you can increase the, the ability to send more stuff, or two, you can just be more frugal with the stuff you have and just pack it better. That is like the worst analogy in history of humanity, but I'm gonna roll with it. Now, I want to give full credit to that bomber boy on Twitter, and also a couple of people tagged me in this as well. Unfortunately, I'm looking at my phone, which is not logged in at the moment, but I will give credit on the screen. So basically, what has happened is No Man's Sky essentially has received a patch. And this patch basically has a lot of improvements. There are massive improvements to the visuals, lots of other content. Quite frankly, I didn't realize how much Hello Games had done to No Man's Sky, like, just damn. Again, it's not a game that I've personally played, but I have to give full credit to the studio. They've done a lot here. But anyway, in the patch, there are graphical presets, essentially, because all games essentially run with different graphical presets. So, for example, the Xbox Series S, the Xbox Series X, the PS5, so on and so on. They're all essentially just running like graphical presets, and that's how developers can tweak things. So, for example, if a game is running not so well, they could be like, we're going to reduce the resolution potentially, or something like that. But anyway, now, I'm sure a lot of you have heard regarding the PS5 Pro the codename Trinity, which is the APU. Now, basically, in this patch, the reference now is to Trinity. So the base model PS5 is also listed as well as Trinity. Now, it is worth noting that the changes that I'm about to go through here, and there are not many, are extremely early. Essentially, from the timelines that we've been hearing regarding the PS5 Pro, it's going to be releasing in November. And basically, developers need to, well, essentially certification processes start, I think, in like end of July or something like that. And all games that support the PS5 Pro, I think that's September. That's from memory, so I might be a little bit out from the dates. But either way, what does matter is these patches are not indicative of what the console is capable of. This is basically the developers essentially just tinkering around and just making sure that the basics work. So there are two major differences at the moment. Maybe I'm missing one, so if I am, let me know in the comments below, that are present. So the first, oh, and you'll also notice there's a bunch of crap which is not referencing the PS5 Pro, like DLSS. It's got like DLSS XCSS as well, which obviously, again, is not relevant to the PS5 Pro. But you'll notice that, first of all, the lowest dynamic resolution scaling factor is 0.6 on the base model console. On the other hand, it's 0.8 for the Pro. So what exactly is that? Essentially, it's the lower the scaling, it's the lowest. It essentially is referencing the lowest resolution that the game can drop to if things start to get busy. So obviously, the lower the scaling factor, the lower the resolution, which means that it impacts performance less, but obviously visual quality also will take a hit, and then that's upsampled afterwards. So again, the base model is 0.6, but again, the PS5 Pro is 0.8. The other big change here is also to the water quality. Now, unfortunately, what we don't know is whether there are specific assets which are in the game for the PS5 Pro, or that simply have not been added yet. It's very possible that is the case. Obviously, some games, I'm expecting, for example, Spider-Man 2, God of War Ragnarok. This is not a leak, by the way, this is speculative. They're all going to have patches. Maybe it's going to improve texture details, maybe it's just going to improve the ray tracing. For example, maybe the PS5 Pro is going to have additional bounces for ray tracing. Maybe it's going to have, just general improvements. It's going to have a bunch of different improvements across the board. So it's going to be very interesting to see exactly what happens. So you can take this patch as, that's interesting. It confirms the code names. It confirms the PS5 Pro does exist, basically, because this is literally a developer essentially creating the work, the framework to support the game. However, the actual information here in terms of like what it's capable of, it means absolutely nothing. It's essentially like you're just testing it just to see if it works, as in, like, does it conk? Are there issues? What do I need to do? Do I need to tweak anything to make the game run on the PS5 Pro, etc., etc. So, with that said, take care of yourselves, guys. Have an amazing day. Stay safe. Bye for now.